action, enhancing collaboration with regional entities to ensure faster and more agile responses to crises, promoting comprehensive peace and development strategies, and bolstering accountability mechanisms for human rights violations. In conclusion, Mr. President, Sierra Leone urges all member states to recommit to the core principles of the UN Charter and work towards a Security Council that is responsive, representative, and accountable to all nations. We reaffirm our unwavering commitment to multilateralism as the most effective framework to address global challenges. Sierra Leone stands ready to contribute to meaningful reforms that will enhance global governance, uphold the international rule of law, and promote a just, peaceful, and prosperous world for all. I thank you.
感谢阿扎雷女士阁下。下面请圭亚那的代表发言。
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Excellency Foreign Minister Wang, and welcome to the Security Council. I also welcome the distinguished ministers and high-level officials in today's meeting, and thank Secretary General Antonio Guterres for his briefing. Mr. President, Guyana thanks China for convening this most relevant and timely debate on practicing multilateralism, reforming and improving global governance. It offers the opportunity not only for collective reflection, but perhaps more importantly, a frank discussion on how we rejuvenate multilateralism and address the deficits in global governance. Mr. President, there have been seminal moments in history where the world came together across geopolitical divides to put people and planet first. If we look at the driving factors of those moments, we will inevitably find that terrible events had, in each instance, reminded countries that multilateralism and international cooperation are the best mechanisms for addressing global challenges. The foremost example is the formation of the United Nations almost 80 years ago. On the heels of 2 world wars, world leaders joined hands with the aim of saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war and crafted the United Nations Charter as the blueprint. The Charter continues to provide a solid foundation for collective global action, grounded in the understanding that peace and security, development, and human rights are interdependent, and that respect for international law and justice are indispensable to achieving these objectives. So too is the need to ensure that solidarity, inclusion, and the objective of leaving no one behind are demonstrated by concrete action. Mr. President, Excellencies, it is the translation from commitments to action where multilateralism has largely not delivered in recent decades. For example, we have seen multilateralism at work when the global community adopted the Sustainable Development Goals to end poverty and ensure prosperity for all, and the Paris Agreement to limit the effects of climate change. However, implementation is stymied by the lack of political will and inadequate financing, coupled with a global financial system that is skewed against countries that are most vulnerable and in need. A system that is not only unrepresentative, but also unfair and unjust. Reform of the international financial architecture is urgent and must no longer be ignored. An investment in development is an investment in peace and security. Mr. President, there is widespread recognition of the need for reform of the global governance structures to make them more representative, democratic, accountable, and equipped to address new and emerging challenges. The Security Council is arguably the least representative and most undemocratic of global institutions. Security Council reform remains critical to a more effective council, or it faces the risk of becoming irrelevant. we have seen repeatedly how the current structure and decision-making format, particularly the use of the veto, have thwarted the will of the majority of Council members and ignored the views of the General Assembly. But even as we pursue reform, as the foremost body entrusted with the maintenance of international peace and security, the Council must deliver on its responsibilities now. At a time of increasing conflicts in the world, resulting in the loss of thousands of lives, immense suffering, and unprecedented humanitarian crises, the members of the Security Council must bridge divides and fulfill our collective mandate. There must be greater consistency in applying the same standard across similar situations and implementation of resolutions. As the Council faces growing criticisms for inaction, greater efforts must be made to rebuild trust in it and genuine consideration given to the use of the tools available in the Charter to combat non-compliance. Mr. President, accountability and justice are crucial to the achievement of peace and security. The Security Council must speak with one voice in championing respect for international law, including international humanitarian law. While it is incumbent on all states to be exemplary in their adherence to the Charter, Council members should hold themselves to the highest standards of performance and accountability. They should not be among those undermining the judicial institutions of the United Nations, which is crucial in ensuring respect for the rule of law and promoting accountability. Mr. President, given the interlinkages in the challenges we face today, there must be a holistic approach. Narrowing development divides, overcoming poverty, increasing opportunity for young people, ensuring women's participation, promoting respect for human rights, and building democratic governance structures are all essential for the attainment of international peace and security. This Council cannot afford to act in a vacuum. It must bring into consideration the related issues of poverty, hunger, inequality, climate change, and the impact of new technologies. In closing, Mr. President, last September, our heads of state and government took a definitive step with the adoption of the Pact for the Future, committing to protecting the needs and interests of present and future generations and transforming global governance. We must now, together, implement the actions outlined in the Pact, recognizing that no state can overcome the challenges we face on its own. It is global solidarity, supported by strong global governance structures and a requisite political will, which will help us to achieve a world that is peaceful, inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous. I thank you.
圭亚那代表的发言，下面我请丹麦代表发言。
Thank you, Mr. President. Denmark welcomes the focus of today's debate. I also thank the Secretary General for his powerful words and his call to action. Mr. President, 80 years ago, from the ashes of two devastating world wars, the international community came together to establish the United Nations. The task was as momentous as it was visionary to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. It was a moment of hope in history, of unbridled optimism for humanity, for the promise of the Charter. Today, that promise remains as important as ever. Denmark is a founding member of this organization. Our belief remains as firm as it was 80 years ago, that many of our challenges are too great and too global for any nation, large or small, to face it alone. A strong and fair system, with the United Nations at its core and international law as its foundation, remains our best, indeed our only, option to address the multitude of threats and challenges we face. Mr. President, allow me to